This episode was the episode that could. When I tell you, we have been trying for 5 months to record this episode, and life kept lifing, even as it was coming down. You're going to hear me say this in the episode to the recording time. I mean, the day of, hours before, I'm like, oh my gosh, are we going to have to reschedule? Is this going to really happen? It happened. In this week's episode, I sit down with story artist Pearl Lowe, a Vancouver-based artist now residing in LA. We talk about them working on the Oscar-winning short film Hair Love, the short film on Netflix called Canvas, working on Craig of the Creek, that's on Cartoon Network. Also, I have to get my notes here. Also, they have illustrated 2 graphic novel adaptations of The Adventures of the Bailey School Kids. Now, I loved that book as a kid, like love, love, love. So there was a lot of fangirling going on here on the inside. And I'm so happy that Pearl and I finally got the time to talk. Also, Pearl is one of those people where I thought we knew each other and we didn't really. I mean, we just been internet peers, cool people, whatever, passing. We chat often on the timeline, but I thought we actually had crossed paths professionally, and we haven't. So this was just such a really, really good conversation. Again, if you are into, animation, want to become a storyboard artist, want to hear about illustrating and adapting a novel to be a graphic novel, relocating. There's just so many things that we covered. Magical girl content, okay? Only child of an immigrant, first gen. We covered it all. Also, I would like to thank Autodesk for sponsoring this episode. I'm not going to keep you guys anymore. Let's get started. As I mentioned, I have a wonderful guest with me that I have been seeing around the interwebs for quite a couple years. Finally got to do a panel with them. Time is a social construct. So was that even this year we did that panel? I think so. I think it was earlier this year. And then we've been trying for months to get this recording session happening. And both of us were just experiencing a lot of life, I would say. We had our own experiences with grief. We had some life-changing, pivoting moments and transitional phases and all sorts of stuff like that. So I mean, I feel like I'm just barely starting to get out of that space myself. I know you have physically changed your environment, so I'm hoping that's helped you too with continuing to move forward with all the things that you've been experiencing emotionally and mentally. And I don't know, it's not something that I know people say time heals all wounds and all sorts of stuff like that. I feel like time just really allows us, I guess, the opportunity to navigate moving through those things, and I'm speaking so broadly because I don't want to get into your business unless there's an opportunity and you feel like sharing it later, but just that's what it is. So I'm so happy. And like I told you before, hitting record, even as it was like an hour before, 30 minutes before, I'm checking the email. I was like, I don't know, something's going to happen. So I'm so happy that we're here today. Pearl, can you please tell the people a little bit about yourself? Maybe nationality, ethnicity, location, job title, like the usual stuff.
Yes. First of all, we did it. We are here. We are in this very moment, time, space, same moment having this interview. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Life has been lifing, is what I mentioned earlier. It's really been throwing the punches. But yes, I will introduce myself. Hi, everyone. I am Pearl Lowe, and I am a Chinese Jamaican storyboard artist, illustrator, comics artist, also muralist. I wear many hats. I think above all else, I identify as a storyteller. I think that's something that resonates with me really strongly. I'm from Vancouver, BC, Canada, and I'm currently settling on the Tongva lands, which is Los Angeles. And I just moved here like a month ago. So everything is really new for me. Everything's real fresh. I'm very excited to be here in a new environment. I'm currently working on Craig of the Creek as a storyboard artist. And forgive me if I'm a little tender today because of the announcements of everything happening with Craig and the merger and stuff like that. But I am currently on Craig of the Creek and very excited to be on that team, be a part of that team to storyboard.
And I always ask all my guests, because the life of an artist or a creative person or just a millennial, you go to school for one thing and you kind of end up doing another. Is what you're doing now something you went to school for?
It is actually. And I think the only reason why I ended up studying animation in college, I went to a 2-year program at Capilano University in North Vancouver, BC. But the only reason why I felt comfortable kind of deciding a career path for myself is because I met 2 people who were doing the job that I'm doing right now. They were both storyboard artists. They were the parents of a classmate of mine in art class, and I got to sit down with them and have coffee and tea and like literally like witness 2 adults functioning. They have a kid, they have a life, they had money, they had it all together from my perspective as a teen. And I was like, oh my God, no, this is what I want to do. And I didn't specifically want to do storyboarding. I knew I wanted to go into animation, but at that time I didn't know if animation was actually like a career that I could really like thrive in, that existed in Vancouver even. Like I had no idea. But meeting with those 2 folks really helped me decide like, yeah, I'm going to go study this because I know it's a future because I've seen it. I've met with them. I've talked with them. So I studied animation, 2D animation, like broadly. And I chose storyboarding. I chose to focus on storyboarding specifically towards like my graduating day. Because it was the thing I sucked the least at. I was like, oh my God, I can't design for shit. I can't do backgrounds. I can't do this. I can't do that. So I felt like storyboarding was kind of like something that I was like, okay, like I think I could kind of fake it till I make it situation in this one job. So I decided to specialize in that and highlight storyboarding work in my like graduate portfolio. And then I got hired for storyboard as a storyboard revisionist in like 2016 after graduating, and kind of the rest is history from there.
I just think about how when I was in school, just like no one I knew was like had parents that were doing anything really creative. I'm from Queens, and that is one of, if not the most diverse borough in New York City. However, everyone's parents are like immigrants. So I think maybe if people were 2nd generation Americans, maybe they might have had them a bit different, but everyone had either like government jobs or just other type of things that, you know, immigrant parents usually end up taking up. My next question I usually ask people too is, what was your first job ever versus like your first industry job?
Oh, that's a good question. So my first job ever was, so we have this thing in Vancouver called the P&E, and it stands for the Pacific National Exhibit. I should know that, but but it's a fair that happens the last 2 weeks of August in the summertime, just before school and everyone goes back to whatever they're going back to. And I had a job as like this, I don't even know what the official title was. I was just a helper at this Game of Thrones exhibit. And they had like all these different like sections of this exhibit, from like costumes, like from like armor to swords. They had a VR section where you were like on the wall and you got to like put on the VR goggles and like look around and stuff like that. And I think they also had just like a wall of death of all the characters who have died so far.
No.
And like, right. And like, just like the lore of the show and stuff like that. So that was my first job, to just kind of go from station to station and just like talk with folks, nerd out with folks about the show, and just like guide them through the exhibit, which, yeah, it was a very chill job. Just because I was like, people who also nerd out about things, like I can get with this. Like, this is great.
That was your first job ever?
Yeah, my mom was really, really kind in a way where she was like, I don't want you to work for as long as possible, like, because you're going to be working your whole life. And I was like, you know
That
what?
part.
That's nice of you. And especially coming from an immigrant like background, like I feel like the push to work when you can work is really like strong. Because my mom is an immigrant to Canada. So is my father. And it's just very much like, yeah, you feel that push, but I think she was very like adamant about being like, hey, I really want you to like focus on your studies and like, you don't need to work. Don't worry about it. Like these are adult problems. Like you don't have to worry about these things. But I personally wanted a job because I was like, I want to start building my resume. Like I want to like know what it's like to like work in a team outside of like a school environment, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was kind of like, yeah, just like mid high school for me.
That's super cool because I mean, everybody's normally like fast food or some sort of retail or something like that. And I mean, yours falls in, I guess, like customer service, but not more in the traditional sense. Like you talked about VR, and it's like, it also makes me feel like, wait, how old are you? But it's okay. You don't have to answer. You don't have to answer. What about your first industry job?
My first industry job was in 2016. Was it 2016? I don't even know, but it was, I think so. It was at Kickstart Entertainment Studios, and it was based in Railtown at the time in Vancouver, BC. And yeah, I was a storyboard revisionist on a show called Ready, Jet, Go. And it was kind of like a educational show for PBS, talking about space. And it was a huge deal for me because I was like really struggling to get someone to hire me. And then it just takes one yes, which is really great. It just took that one producer to come over from Kickstart Entertainment. And they were like a smaller studio. I don't think they had more than 30 people at the time. And so I got hired as a storyboard revisionist, but I also wore many hats at that studio because they were still growing, which was great because I got to see like how other departments worked and how other jobs, like what they actually did in the pipeline of animation. So technically, yes, storyboard revisionist was my first job at Kickstarter, but also kind of dabbed into other things here and there.
So by the time this episode comes out, I believe some of the information that you shared, I know for a fact, I have a couple episodes before yours comes out, but the information you shared with me before recording will be public by then. So I'm saying this understanding that you are in a sensitive space, but I would like to know a bit more about how has your experience been working on Craig of the Creek as an artist?
Yeah. So right now, I think Twitter is blowing up about this conversation. So everyone already knows about the scene, like the episodes being cut in half. But I absolutely feel so much gratitude for being put on the show. I laugh because it was such a weird like meeting of like events and timing because I was just literally on Twitter, just talking into the internet space. And Jeff Trammell, who was a writer at the time on the show, was like, oh, Pearl, because I was taking a trip to LA because Hair Love had been nominated for an Oscar. So this was 2019.
Yes.
End of 2019. So I was like, okay, like Oscars are happening. Let me just go feel the energy, like make some visits, meet people in person from, the crew on Hair Love potentially. And I tweeted that, and Jeff found that tweet and saw that I was coming to visit LA, and reached out and was like, hey, like, would you like to like hang out and like I can give you a tour of Cartoon Network and maybe you can meet the Craig crew? And I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like, let me meet the crew. And so I got to meet everybody. They were the kindest people. I had no idea that you could actually be on a show, on a production, and like people were amicable and like everyone got along and like it wasn't like weird vibes. My previous experiences with animation has been, they have been very abusive in different ways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So for me to be like, oh my God, you guys are talking to each other, like you're like hanging out outside of these like work parameters, like you actually like each other was wild to me. The producer at the time, Kelly Cruz, had a meeting with me and she was just telling me basically about the culture of, the Creek and everybody who works there. And I was sold. I was like, please let me in. I want to be on the show. This sounds amazing. And then a couple of weeks later, I ended up, starting my first episode in April 2020. And I got to work, I'm still working with Richie Pope. And it's so interesting because that show, that production, so intentionally picks people to be on that production. Because, you have to like, whenever you have a production, it's like ideal to have people who kind of fit the culture of your show and what you're trying to say, story wise and stuff like that. And I feel that with everybody on the crew. I'm like, Mom, like you're meant to be here. Like so many of the members contribute so much of their own personhood to the story, and to be able to experience that and also contribute that for myself on the production has been amazing. Because a lot of times I think I've been hired as an extra pair of drawing hands, for the director versus I want to hire you because I want your perspective, especially as a Black person, especially as a Black woman, like on a show. So I think Craig really carved out a space for me to actually kind of fill, that kind of role and be myself and storytell in a way that like feels impactful for me. So yeah, that's how I feel currently. I feel like I've been like so like emotionally like pulled like different ways because of what's happening right now. But I think that's genuinely how I feel. And everyone is just so talented and is really willing to like share knowledge to help everyone grow. And everyone is accountable. And like we talk amongst each other. Like if we're having an episode with like culturally specific things, it's like, okay, well, let's talk to the Asian like crew members on this. Let's talk to the Black crew members on this, on Craig for this specific episode, because like we need to know, we need to make this authentic. Like we're not going to not consult the people on the show about what's happening here. So it was very collaborative in that way. And it really shows through, I think, in every episode.
Okay, so my mind is going a couple different places. Did you at any point work with Everett Downing on his Book of Mojo?
No, but I did work with him on Hair Love when he was co-directing.
Yeah, so that's where we're gonna go to then, because I couldn't remember. I think it's you, and I can't remember their last name, but there's like a Portland T. No, and her this other lady, Toffany. I think that's her at name. It's like Tiffany something.
Oh, Tiffany.
Yeah. So I felt like I couldn't really remember. I was like, was Pearl a part of that bunch too?
I see.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's keep it moving to Hair Love. I want you to talk about your time and how you ended up in a part of Hair Love, but also, would you say, was there any sort of like stepping stone with the culture and the community? I'm saying community, but camaraderie, I think, is the word with Hair Love. And then like almost like leapfrogging into Craig of the Creek. Like, was there any sort of parallels with just the team and how you're saying like inclusivity and really talking with one another?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually really interesting to think about. And also just like, oh my God, how, like, again, time is a construct. I'm like, oh my God, trying to walk this back and like in my experience. But one of the things I think that was a catalyst for me kind of working on all these shows in particular or projects in particular was just me kind of trying to center or focus on exploring what storytelling looks like through my Black lens and like tapping into that. Because I think before 2017, I did not draw Black people. I didn't think about my Black experience expressed through art. It was wild. And especially the city that I live in, like, or lived in, Vancouver, like Black people make up less than 2% of the population. And so there are many people, including myself, that did not even interact with Black people. Like we don't have Black friends. People don't have Black friends. They don't talk to Black people ever. And it's very like, you're very isolated in your experience and you don't see yourself because on the streets, statistically, like you're not even visible. So it's this weird. Yeah, it's this weird, especially like being Chinese and Black. It's very much like, okay, like I guess I'll navigate spaces through my Chinese, identity, and which, Chinese people roll deep in Vancouver. So I was able to do that. But there's a certain point in time where I was like, I don't feel fulfilled as an artist not talking about this other lived experience of mine. So trying to focus on that, I started storytelling, doing like little mini comics on Twitter, and then people were like, you should make an actual like full length book or full length graphic novel. And I was like, oh man, I'm not a comics artist. I don't know how to make comics. And I was like, okay, but like, let me just try a thing. So that's when I decided to write my self-published comic Tension. And it was just about my like experience with just like growing up with curly hair in the context of Vancouver and like, you know, my heritage and everything. And so just talking about my natural hair journey there. And after I created it, I had a Kickstarter that was kind of like, oh, pledge to help me print it and help me distribute it and all that kind of stuff. And that book ended up in the hands of a friend of mine, Crystal Babbage, who's now, I think, storyboarding at Netflix still. And Crystal ended up passing that book to Everett. And so Everett read this book and was like, wait, this book's about curly hair? Wait, a Black woman wrote this? Wait, who's this person? And wait, they also work in animation? And it just kind of like snowballed from there.
Nice.
And so Everett reached out to me and was like, hey, would you like to work on this? And I was like, immediately, yes. I was like, yes, I'll work on this. Yes. And so we worked on Hair Love for a short amount of time because I worked on it just before they were acquired by Sony. So it was still in their Kickstarter phase. So yeah, Everett and I worked together for a little bit, and then it got moved on to studio production, and then I kind of fell back. But at that point in time, I also started just kind of like storyboarding other projects at other studios in Vancouver. And then I also worked on Canvas, which Frank Abney.
And that's part directed. Of my confusion too, because Frank also contributed to Book of Mojo. So I'm just like, what is her
it's a
part
small,
of that?
All the Black artists were like, let's work together.
Yeah. I'm like, my mind is like fake creating memories. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah. So in that time frame, I also worked on Canvas, and I think just me being more comfortable exploring and also intentionally wanting to storytell like through my Black lens. I think that just kind of like really aligned me for the opportunity to work on Craig and to want to put myself out there to apply for that job with the crew at Craig of the Creek. So yeah. Did that answer your question?
Well, part of the question was just about if Hair Love and Canvas kind of prepared you in their own way for the community with Craig of the Creek.
Yes, I would say yes. I think because, again, like coming from Vancouver's animation industry at that time, I'm no longer in it. So I don't know if it's changed since I've left. But then, again, it's very much like, it's a very deadline-driven animation industry because we're outsourced for a lot of American content. So a lot of times we don't have the autonomy to say certain things story-wise. It's like, nope, this is the script. Don't deviate from it. Just board as is, because we don't have time to tweak things, pitch things, have a conversation back and forth about what direction we want this episode to go in. And so having the ability to do that more on Hair Love and on Canvas was like, oh, I like this. I like being heard, basically. I like being seen and like having my perspective valued. So I think that was a very like small way of preparing me for Craig, because Craig, it took me a whole year to like really understand and like internalize that, no, this is real. Like, this is not just me. This is not just everyone pretending that everything is okay on the production and then shit's going to hit the fan. Sorry, I don't know if we're allowed to swear on the podcast. But like, I don't know if things are just like, we're pretending it's going to be good and everyone's nice and supportive, but like, no, people are incredibly supportive on Craig and genuine about like who you are, like genuine about who they are and who you are and the value that you bring to the team. And I don't think anything could have really prepared me for that except for the experience itself. So I think I got a little taste on Hair Love and Canvas, but I think because I was on Craig for longer too, because both Canvas and Hair Love were short films, that like a series experience really like now I physically register like, wow, this could be a reality. This is my reality. And this is such a safe space that they've created and I've been invited into. And I am so privileged and so grateful to continue to be part of that. So yeah, it briefly prepared me. Short answer.
Yeah. The two out of the 3 productions I was on while at Netflix, it was definitely its own quirky, like little family thing. And I believe that was what made it so hard about the layoffs. It's just that I knew how special the team was, having been on other productions and other groups of people. There was nothing really like that group yet, in my experience. I'll say yet because anything's possible, where like people really cared about like your mental and like physical wellness as well. I felt like heard, it was like really we're all aiming for the same, end goal and same result. Even though I'm bigger, I've only worked in features. Even though we know that in all those other productions, it just felt really more like collaborative with this group. So my heart was really aching. Like, I don't know how long it will take for me to find a similar type of feeling again,
Right.
So, I get it. And I think for anyone that's listening, watching, whatever, however you're consuming this episode, like if it's a short, if it's a series, if it's a feature, if it's like, I don't know, an independent thing, once and when you come across a group like that, you really have to just cherish it because it shouldn't be rare, but it seems like things could change as the industry, I wouldn't say change, but as new people come in and people who've been in there move up and stuff like that. And I feel like we're so much more conscious and adamant about like the culture of animation and animation production. So I would hope that definitely it becomes a more common thing with the teams. I know for me, working with PAs or more entry level people, I try to create and cultivate that. And you was just talking about working in Canada and being more outsource driven. I don't know how I ended up talking to this person. Also can't really recall who this person was, but I remember them telling me that like that was kind of some of their frustration being basically an artist in an outsourced studio, is that they just kind of get dumped the work and that they don't get any of the benefits of like working on American productions.
We do not.
And they don't get any creative like say or anything like that. And I'm here like, this is just a big old problem, because me feeling like besides artist jobs, a lot of production jobs are going overseas as well now, with the industry leaning more into that pre-production phase. That really cuts down our employment opportunities, because like 2/3 of the pipeline is being sent overseas now. So we're all just like, how can we really make this better for everybody? The artist, the production people, like, I think it's on us, but this is not, I have my podcast. I could talk about that at a later time. This is about you. So you also shared with me that you want to come up with your own animated series. So what is that stem from the book you created and some of the response you got from that? Or is it like your job experience that may have been making you want to lean more into your own series?
I think that I've always had ideas that I've always just wanted to flesh out and create with other people, expand with other people. Just because I think the urge came from the studios that I would work at in Vancouver and just not being artistically like satisfied in a way. 'Cause especially if it's preschool content that I was working on, I'm like, okay, stories only get so deep, for the age group. And the kids that I represented in these preschool shows at the time, things are changing, but at the time specifically, it was very, very homogenous. And I was like, okay, like I do not feel like I could put myself into this because I don't see myself in these shows anyway. So I felt like creating stuff on the side was kind of my way to fill in that kind of gap of not being able to creatively satisfy myself. But then that kind of turned into, oh, wait, putting out tension made me feel really good. Like, this is my own story and people really responded well to it and helped people and people saw themselves in it. Oh, wait, working on something that, I really like feel like has an impact is worthwhile. Like even with like Hair, Love and Canvas and Craig, I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I think I've come to this point where I really just want to create my own show and I really want to put that out there. And it's hard. I've tried once and I'm going to keep trying again. I did option out a show with Netflix and it got cut, but it was a very good experience because I got to work with a writer and I got to like understand what more than ever understand about creating a Bible and trying to refine it in a way that's really like, it's just like 100% like tight, and pitch it and have people know exactly what you want and what kind of show this is. And yeah, and I'm constantly, working at those skills, especially writing. But yeah, it's always been a dream of mine to like, and I think it kind of goes back to the reason why I got into animation. But like when I first watched my first animated thing, which is probably a Ghibli thing, I really felt at that moment, though I couldn't articulate it this way, but I feel like at that moment I was like, wow, like I feel things right now and I want to be able to give someone this feeling as well. And I think that's driven me throughout my career and has led me to a point of like, yeah, I want to create my own show because I want to give people that feeling. I want to give people some kind of joy, some kind of like inspiration, sense of wonder, and the feeling that they can do and be whatever they want. And I think that is something that's just kind of been something that's like a light to my fire. So, yeah, I think that's how I feel.
And who would your show be for?
It would be, so I'm really a sucker for like self-discovery stories. And so this is difficult because this gap, this zone in animation seems to be a desert for Western animation anyway. But young adult spaces, like the young adult space is something that I really want to tackle because there's so many experiences that you have when you're in your teens specifically. And my show that I want to put out is a magical girl show.
Yes,
but
magical
also,
girls.
Magical girls, queers, we're going to have like non-binary trans folks too. So it's not just actual girls. But like, I really, when you're learning about yourself and you're going through those changes, like it's so important to see different examples of like different types of people and who you could be and what those people stand for and their values and just options. There's no such thing as too many options for children, like children, for teens, for even adults too. Cause like sometimes you need to see it to believe it, that you could be it. So that's something that I really want to do is just kind of like put something in this desert, this real empty area of animation in the Western world. I want to contribute to that or like start that, open up that door. Cause I really think that, the conversation of like, girls stop watching cartoons, when they're 13. I was like, we don't. We just go to anime instead because you don't want to talk about the topics that we're interested in, like all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
I'm one of the few girls that just hasn't pivoted into anime per se. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're going to get into some of the content that you shared with me too, but it's like, I am very much that meme that's like, here's my list of shows to watch based on everything people have told me. And here's the 3 shows that I just keep watching over and over again because of comfort. Like they make me feel good. Why am I going to just, disrupt that?
Yes.
But to your point of saying that you need to see it to believe it, I think also we just don't know what we don't know at the same time. So like you could just not know that there's all these opportunities for you in your self-discovery journey because no one has ever presented them to you, So I'm already excited for your show. And, if you need a production person, I'm available.
Listen, I'm creating a list. Everyone is coming at me. I'm like, this is the team right here.
Yeah. And I think that sounds super, super cool and interesting too. Like for me, it's been hard, just like and realistically, like I guess depression with this year and burnout. But I have this like passion project I've been slowly chucking away at. And for similar things, just like wanting to put, for me, it's more like Black voices on screen and in the animated context as well. And like, how can I do that in like a relatively authentic way and a storytelling way? And I completely feel you with that young adult space. Like that's, even though we're all like older millennials or whatever, mid millennials, because whatever that spectrum is, the people I've interviewed, but it's just like that demographic of the teens that you're saying is completely like gone. And that's some of my favorite stuff too from like coming up. Like, of course, cutesy stuff, the preschool or the kids. And I haven't been too crazy about the adult content, just full transparency. Some of it's been quite interesting, but that teen sector, like that's really my heart because that's what I gravitated to so much like as a kid. And I think that makes all that sense of the things that you were saying. So
yeah,
you're going to do it.
Thank you. I hope so. I also think that specifically, this is the whole thing about like, oh, adults don't watch cartoons either. I'm like, I don't know. For me, when you watch cartoons for children, I'm like, it's not only speaking to children, but like it's speaking to the inner child within us too. Like we are no longer those like kids that we were. Like we are still that same person. We have just adjusted and assimilated into adult society. But I still believe that a lot of our essence is still there. And like some of the lessons, some of the trauma that we haven't unpacked, like if that episode comes up in a young adult show and it's like, oh,
yeah,
what? I resonate with that because that was me at that age. And like, let me think about that. Let me work through that. Like, I just feel like there are opportunities to talk to people at different levels, no matter like what age you are as well. So.
Have you worked on a feature yet? A feature film?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So I would like for you to talk about, as it pertains to your work as a storyboard artist, what is the experience like working on series, short versus feature? Mm-hmm. I know the time and the pacing, maybe if you have able to do more refined work versus scratchy work, just anything like that that could be helpful for some listeners.
Yeah. So I feel like I've had a variety of experiences. Predominantly, I come from a 3D background for animated TV series. And for that, it's kind of like half and half. I guess it's different because I was in Vancouver. So because we sent a lot of stuff to either like Hong Kong or like India to be animated, and there might have been like language barriers or just not enough time, things had to be a little bit tighter and cleaner. So things didn't get left like for interpretation. Like it has to be like clarity, like 100%. But with 3D, I feel like I was able to kind of be a little looser. Backgrounds you were able to like take from 3D models and like take screenshots and put them in the background and like, kind of like those little shortcuts. And you didn't have to be mindful in the certain type of way of 2D where you're like, oh, we only have a certain amount of backgrounds. Like don't create more backgrounds or more angles of a background we already have kind of thing. Sometimes that can be broken, that rule can be broken, but a lot of times it's like, be mindful of that. Both schedules for 3D and 2D TV is tight. I think from Vancouver perspective, I've only had maximum 3 weeks to do 12 pages script, whereas on Craig, I have 5 weeks to do half an 11-minute episode and share that with somebody else. So the time given to two different, industries is different. So I do feel really great with the time that's given for Craig and the support that's given for Craig. For feature film, I think just because there's more money in it, and things are usually done more in-house, like within either like the same city or something like that, or at least like same language, I guess. Like if you ship it somewhere else, like they're also like an English speaking city. So I feel like I was able to, literally like draw grids for backgrounds or whatever, and like not have to draw things on model, which is where I thrive. Drawing on model and drawing tight for me, like clean drawings is really hard for me. I feel like I kind of lose a lot of life in my drawings, but if it's scribbly and like messy, which is very subjective, but like I feel like my stuff is a little bit more lively when it's scribbly and messy. Is where it's like the sweet spot for me. So I do really enjoy feature for that reason. And there tends to be more exploration of like, let's look at the scene. Oh, let's rework that because we have the time, we have the budget, and we can do that. Whereas TV, it's a little bit more like, oh, we can only do a few more changes. Let's try not to make too many changes because we have to keep moving forward. And for short films, I feel like short films, it depends. Canvas, I feel like I had time because it wasn't attached to any studio. It was, like independently done. And so there was more time on that. And for Hair Love, kind of the same thing. I feel like there wasn't much of like you have to crank this out in a certain amount of time. I feel like, there were deadlines, but I feel like I was able to still like draw loosely and have like a lot of like creative input and feel pretty good about like, not having to like, I don't know. I just felt like creatively like pretty good in those situations. So I do like short film and feature spaces the most, just because of time and loose drawings. But TV series, is also good. It's just different.
So again, being that you're a person that is multifaceted, you've done and do a lot of different things. I was a huge fan of Billy School Kids. So
Oh.
when that popped up, I was like, oh my gosh, like, so how did that opportunity come about to be the illustrator for the graphic novel? One, two, do you contribute to the story development, or is it like really pulling from the already established books? Are you just doing some re-imaging from it? Is it whole new stories?
Got it.
Did you geek out and spaz too when like you like, I don't know, sealed the deal with that? Like, I want to know kind of everything.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So, okay. So after Tension came out, people were like, Pearl, like if you want to continue your work in publishing, like I would suggest you get an agent, because I think that would be very helpful for you for any future negotiating that happens. And for contracts and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yes, you're right. So I ended up applying for, to be represented. And I ended up being represented by Kelly Sonic, and she is at Andrea Brown. Was it agency? Sorry, my brain. And she's been in the business for like over a decade, and definitely like knows the ropes. And so I think people just reached into her inbox and was like, "We noticed you're representing Pearl. Like, I think Pearl would be a really good fit for." This new project, it's the Bailey School kids. And so they just went into her DMs basically and was like, hey, is Pearl available for work? And so I had a conversation with David Saylor at the time, art director. I think I'm sorry for people's titles. I don't know. But I had conversations with him, and we were just talking about the project. And I was like, yeah, I would really like to try this. This is my first time getting onto a graphic novel project with a major publishing house, Scholastic. Like, hell yeah, I want to do this. So I got onto the project, and I came onto it in the position of being kind of an adapter. So, the Bailey School kids came out the time it came out, and it's time to modernize some things. And so I helped to modernize some language, and also kind of put culturally some significant things that I'm like, I think kids nowadays like would appreciate this, or like the way they dress, update the designs. And so I didn't necessarily rewrite the story, but I feel like I modernized it in a way that, a new generation could kind of enjoy the characters in the story today. And, one of the things that I was as a kid was a scaredy cat. And I was like, oh my God.
I am a scaredy cat. I actually am.
Right? But like, same. I can't do horror. Like, I really cannot. It was a lot for me to watch Nope for Jordan Peele's film. That was a push.
I didn't even watch it. I'm not going to do that.
You didn't watch it?
No, I'm sorry.
I don't know. But like, yeah, I think as a kid, I was like, really traumatized by anything scary. And like the Bailey School kids covers, I was like, Frankenstein, vampires. I was like, no, I don't want to read it. But like now being able to like engage with this whole entire series of over 80 books or whatever, like I was like, you know what, let me just take a read at this now at my big age and like see how it is. And it's cute. It's lightly spooky. So I was able to, at this age, do whatever I need to do. So that's how I got onto the project, and it was very cool to meet the authors, and just like, be like, hey, you've literally built this huge legacy. So many people were fans of your work, and it's really cool to be part of that reboot of like a new way of taking in their books, in graphic novel form. Because I think a long time ago, not even a long time ago, but like, comics weren't considered books. Like people were like, you're not really reading if you're reading a comic. And it's like, really? Okay, well, I'm reading or not reading at all. Like, give me a comic or I'm not doing anything. So I think especially now, comics being a little bit, seen in a little bit of a different light. I feel like having kids just like read, period, and like and take this series in graphic novel form is just like really nice, because I'm like, yes, please read and like enjoy the visuals and like just like get into a story. And I was really happy to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think for their books, like you're saying about the covers, I just went with the ones that weren't so creepy. Like I feel like one was like I don't know, my teacher was like an alien, or someone was like a zombie or whatever. But back to Jordan Peele, I saw Get Out in theaters, highly stressed.
It was very stressful. Yes.
Highly stressed. I was sitting in between two friends. My hands were sweaty and I was sinking lower and lower in my seat to the point where they turned over and they're like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "No."
You were on the ground.
I was like, "I'm never doing this again." So as far as his movies are concerned, I'll buy a movie ticket. I'm not going to show up.
That's real support. That's community support.
I was like, I can't do it. So nope, I didn't want to see because it's geeky, but I just am horrible with suspense. Like even watching, I'm watching Atlanta and dealing whatever. He's had episodes throughout the whole series that are suspenseful.
Right.
And sometimes, and sometimes I feel like it's self-imposed. Like, why am I, nothing is actually happening here, but I feel like something should happen. And I was like, I should go back and just watch my safe cartoons. Like,
I don't need the stress.
Not at all. So before we move to the second part of the show, what prompted your move or departure from Vancouver? Vancouver.
Yeah. I really wanted to, be here to meet the people I've been working with for 2 years on Craig of the Creek. I've been freelancing the whole entire time from Canada up until last month. So it was definitely like, I would like to meet the people and just kind of like, be in that environment and not feel so isolated. I was also kind of like, you know what? I've never lived in another place before, lived and worked in another place before. So I was like, this is my opportunity to try to like go on an adventure. And I already had community here and a job here. And I was like, it's a no-brainer. I'm just going to try a thing and see how it goes. And that's why I moved. It's really been nice so far.
Yeah, same here for me. Like I've always lived in New York. I went to college. I didn't even like dorm in college. I just commuted. So I felt with the pandemic, I could just do something different and like take a break and like recharge, figure some things out. I know enough people still trying to get me to go to California. And we'll see. I just don't know, which is going to be a later conversation too. If I'll really make that leap, it does. I also remind myself like nothing has to be permanent either. You know, so we'll cross that bridge when it gets there. But I love that and I support that. And to go kind of where you already have a community, so you're not building over. Where I am, I have friends and extended family as well. So socially, I'm not starting over, and I'm not that far from New York, so I can get back often. And actually, someone just told me that there's like some sort of maybe social terminology thing for people who are from big inner cities, essentially probably like New York, maybe like Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, I guess, maybe even DC too. And how we don't ever want to be too far from our city. Like, I don't know if there's an umbilical cord that, has us attached that we can only be maybe 3 hours away from wherever it is that city is. So I'm like, I want to look into that documentation. But yeah, so now we're going to get into some of your favorite animated content. I watched most of these things at the time that you sent it to me. I'm going to try my best to remember. Possible that I didn't see this one, though. This is Millennium Actress.
Yes.
So I want to tell the listeners and viewers, this is available on YouTube, Amazon Prime, and Pluto TV. Can you, in just a couple sentences, give a synopsis, maybe not spoiler, what this film is about?
Okay. It is about two guys who are trying to interview this now retired 70-year-old epic actress and her career journey and her life's journey. And what they find out is a total surprise to them. And and the way that they are swept into the story of her life and her career is also part of the movie's journey, I would say.
And why is it your favorite?
Oh my God. I was telling my partner about this. I think it's my favorite because it's a movie that raised me, oddly enough. I remember being in some store and there was like a discount bin of like DVDs. And I was like, I'm into anime. So I looked in through all of it, and I just saw this one animated film. And I was like, I have no idea who Satoshi Kon is. I have no idea what this movie's about. I did not read the back. I was just like, wow, it's anime and it's like $3. I want to buy it. And so my mom bought it for me and I watched it and I was just entirely captivated. Did I understand everything in the film? No. Until this day, I feel like every time I watch it, I feel like something is revealed to me that I did not notice before. But I was just so captivated the first time I watched it. And I feel like I really resonated even at my 1-digit-year-old age. I feel like I resonated with the themes.
1-digit-year-old.
I was very young.
I love it.
But I feel like I resonated in some way that I couldn't articulate with the themes that were being talked about in the movie. And so I just kept on watching it. And it just was a tether for me. It is a tether for me every time I need to be re-inspired by cinema in general, but also just like animated cinema. So yeah, that's why it's a fave.
So another one of your favorites, which is mine too. I mean, like right here into the Spider-Verse. Why is it one of your favorites?
Oh, so that came out in 2018, right?
Sure did.
I think. Yep. And so I feel like I was kind of at a weird spot with my relationship with animation. I didn't feel like I wanted to be in the industry per se. I don't know if anything was really inspiring me. And then I saw this film about a Black Spider-Man with just a whole different style of just like movies in general. Like the pacing was so tight. The editing was so tight. The graphics were amazing. And like the colors and everything that they just like put into the film felt so fresh and so new. I literally tried watching it in every single theater I could. I watched it 5 times before it rotated out. But it was, yeah, right. It was it was just so good. And it was so intentional. It just felt so thoughtful. I was like, especially as a mixed Black person, as like myself too, I was like, oh, this is so cool to see another mixed Black person's experience and to see like New York in such a colorful way and to also see Miles approach being Spider-Man in his own way. Like, I think, even down to the technical ways of him being animated, like Miles likes to run. Like you see him running a lot and then like, spitting out like spider webs and then swinging from place to place instead of predominantly swinging. Like he adds running into it or like running along buildings and then like, swinging to another location. Like those little details, like I really appreciate it. And like, it just really re-inspired me to be like, I love animation. Oh my God, like this medium deserves everything. So yeah, that's why it's one of my favorites.
I feel you on that, like the identity thing, and just for me, having family, and I apologize for those of you who've heard this 10 billion times, but having the actual like Black American identity, but also the other half of my family, it's like first gen American. It's like, it felt good finally seeing like, wow, he's like Black, but Spanish. And even though you could be both of them together, I'm like, yes, that's cool. We're making progress. Now I want to see Caribbean people. No offense to you, Pearl, but that's not Jamaican because Jamaicans are always on the screen.
No, we're everywhere.
I want to see people who are not Jamaican, also Caribbean. And I'm just like, we're getting so close to like my full identity. This is just me personally, but my full identity being represented or accounted for in the animated context. Like I would love that. Working on it. So I gravitate to Miles so much just because like, yes, again, Spanish mom, Black dad, New York, it's always Brooklyn, but it's fine. It's fine. And I was like, yes, so it's coming. It's happening one day soon.
Yes.
I want to go back actually to your first movie, The Millennium Actress. Do you have a favorite moment from that movie?
Oh man, favorite moment? Oh my gosh, that's so hard.
The whole movie is your favorite.
Literally, the whole movie is my favorite. There's a montage that happens in the middle of the movie, and it just takes the main character, the actress Chiyoko. It takes her through the ages, and so you kind of see her like slightly grow up, but also like move through the ages of like her life, but also Japan as it like. The influences change from like, different time periods and, styles change and architecture changes and stuff like that. So I just really like that montage because it just feels really like a good way to time skip. Yeah, I think that's my favorite moment.
We're going to go back to anime, and you shared Kiki's Delivery Service.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I feel like for me, I saw that I was definitely still in grade school, and Kiki's Delivery Service was one of those movies that it used to come on the Disney Channel, like on Sundays randomly. Disney would just throw on some like anime stuff. And I remember seeing that being like, oh, like this is different, you know? And I was a girl that was super into Sailor Moon, Card Captors. I teach Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, Charmed, like to the point where my mom was like, no. Like, I don't know what's going on here, but we're not doing this witchcraft in my Caribbean home. Like, you know,
literally not my Caribbean home.
Yeah. So for me, seeing Kiki's Delivery Service, I was like, oh, this is so interesting. And seeing, like what you're saying, the coming of age and struggling. And it was sometimes back in my day, there was a TV Guide channel. So if you saw, you're scrolling and Kiki's Delivery Service was coming on at some point, Mom, I need to be home from church, from the supermarket. I cannot miss Kiki's Delivery Service. Doesn't matter how many times I've seen it. Like, I would cry because I like cannot see it from the beginning, you know, because we didn't have DVR and all that.
We can't rewind.
You just gotta watch it. So why is Kiki's Delivery Service one of your favorite movies?
I was just talking about this film today too. So like my relationship with Kiki's Delivery Service, I think it goes back to the, this is me. This is the inner child. This is me. I feel like Kiki is me because of the constant revisiting of self-discovery. I think we're always unfolding and learning about ourselves anyway. And I think the journey of like what Kiki's taking and learning about herself in a new environment and like literally moving and like for the purpose of like her personhood, but also I guess her job, her whatever, being a witch, felt very like timely for like now specifically. I'm like, I'm moving to a new place. I am discovering who I am in this new context, this new environment. And I feel like that always happens in some sort of form. And so like, Kiki just stays being relevant for me. And like, especially the themes of burnout. And then, you know, like the artist friend, I think Ursula, I think is the English character's name, but the one in the countryside in the cabin, like she experienced burnout. And like talks about it and then talks about like creating from your spirit and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, like, yes, like sometimes we need a break and then we need to reconnect. Yeah. So I just think that those themes are just really timeless. And every time I watch it, it just feels good. Cause I'm like, yeah. And it's also just about like growing up and we're all getting older all the time. Yeah. So we're all growing up all the time. And I just think that, yeah, it just stays relevant. And it's a really gentle way of like being like, it's going to be okay. Like you'll find yourself in some kind of turbulence, but like at the end of it, like you'll come out, you know, recalibrated and you can keep on going kind of thing. So
moving on to your TV shows, I already mentioned Card Captor.
Yes.
You had that as one of your favorites. Why? How come?
You know, sometimes when I think about why my favorites are my favorites, it's very much like, sometimes it's because they kept me company. I am an only child. I would come home after school, watch cartoons. The cartoons that would keep me company, one of them was Card Captor Sakura. So
yeah, also only child, completely feel it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So I feel like that's a reason why I also have this really huge attachment. But I think it was my actual first introduction because, again, I was a scaredy cat. I couldn't watch Sailor Moon. Like, I could not because it was scary for me. So I watched Card Captor Sakura instead for like a really long time because I was like, oh, this is magical girl stuff. Oh my God, she roller skates to like, or like roller blades to school. This is so cool. And like, I don't know. I felt like her life was not unattainable. Like, I was like, I go to school. I have a best friend. Like, I could be a magical girl too. Oh my gosh. I could rollerblade to school if I wanted.
That's hilarious about it being attainable. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had a real disconnect with stuff like that. Like, I felt like everything was attainable. Like, you know how people are, specific people, if you will, like, are in an uproar with a Black Little Mermaid. Yep. You couldn't have told me when I was a kid that I was not The Little Mermaid because
That's it. You were.
Who cares? She has blue eyes, red hair. I have none of those things. I did not. I was a mermaid too. It was right there. So yeah, man, that's funny. Everything was, and it's weird to think about how I really was watching Sailor Moon and like in early grade school, I was like in third grade. I remember like I could kind of remember my morning routine. That's like you can watch Sailor Moon and Pokemon, but you had to leave as soon as those credits come so I could be on time for school because I walked to school.
That's cute.
Yeah. So as I got older, I think my programming went to Recess and Pepper Ann, but I could only watch half of Pepper Ann. I was going to be late.
That's cute. I love
so
that.
I was like, how was I watching Sailor Moon? Because Sailor Moon, and rewatching it, has some like really dark moments with the villains and stuff. And I guess maybe my brain just like tossed that out.
You're like, okay, but magic comes in. Like, that's fine.
Tuxedo Mask. Oh my God. Like, yeah, forget all that other stuff. So another show that you mentioned was Revolutionary Girl. Is it Utena?
Utena, yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about that one.
Ooh, it's a weird, it's kind of like the show makes no sense, but it makes all the sense at the same time. It's very gay, very gay. And it's very like, I think it is very shoujo, I guess. But I guess it's the story about adolescence and growing up and fighting these obstacles, whether they're people or yourself or themes about growing up. And then coming out the other side again, like, all right, transformed, like I'm a different person now. And the main character, Utena, is a girl and likes to dress as a prince, like in the boys' uniform. And she's very princely and falls in love with this character, who is so weird to explain. It's so weird to explain. Who's like kind of being abused. Yeah, being abused and not stepping into her personhood because of various reasons. And it's kind of like a knight in shining armor story of like her connecting with Anthe, and which is that girl's name, Anthe, and learning about herself and learning about Anthe and their relationship and growing as teens and coming out the other side as different people, as more evolved people who have grown. But there's just so many rose petals, so much gay imagery. Like, it's just so great. And like magical girl stuff too. There's like fights randomly. It's a lot in the best way. Mm-hmm.
That sounds so fun. For the listeners, that is available to watch on Pluto TV. Cardcaptor is on Netflix. And the next show that I did check out a couple episodes is also on Netflix, and that's Little Witch Academia.
Yes.
And I can say that I forgot, but I have all intentions on continuing to watch that.
Please.
Yeah, it's very cute. It's very interesting to me. It falls in line with everything else that you watch.
Yes.
Like, I don't know if you see the theme by having it presented to you in this way. It's like
there's a theme.
It's kind of screaming. Why is this one of your favorites? Also, what is it about?
Okay, so it's about this one girl who ends up getting accepted. Her name is Ako. Ako gets accepted into a witch academy. She's not a witch. She's like, oh my God, I get to be like my idol, who she has trading cards of, and she's a witch. And she's like, I've seen magical shows. She's performed for the public, for the human like public. And she went to the school. Now I get to go to the school. I'm going to be like her. But it turns out that when she goes to the school, she can't do magic at all. She's struggling. Like, everyone's like, how did you even get accepted into the school? But she also ends up like walking this journey of potentially like being the strongest witch, kind of thing in her own way. Not to give spoilers. So yeah, I think what I like about it is like we love a good story of an underdog rising and accomplishing great things in their own way. And I think that like it's just really feel good as well. It talks about community and friendship, and again, like learning lessons about yourself and kind of like navigating your baggage and other people's baggage and just being like, okay, like this is how we can come to common ground. Magical elements. I'm a sucker for magical girl transformations and just like all these different spells. And what is it? Is it Studio Trigger who did that series? I think Studio Trigger did that series. Their animation skills are so good. They did, I think they did these things. They did Promare, you know, the animation style of that. So, and then they also did Kill la Kill, which I did not watch because for reasons, but the animation style and like Gurren Lagann and like, you know, just like real solid animation that's just so like stretchy and like really grounded in reality and just like so masterful. It's like such a joy to watch. And like every time the theme songs come on, I just cry because I'm like, oh my God, it's feel good. Try your best show. Like, I just love this. So that's why.
Oh man, there's just so much similarities here. I totally get that. I get that. I get that so much. So we're going to pivot into some questions that I gave you beforehand. I hope that you were able to think about them a little bit.
I tried meditating on some.
I know it always stumps people for like, I don't know, the second and third season of the show. So I was like, let me give it to people. And sometimes people are still stumped, but you know what? It's okay. I'm good at editing. You're not going to look bad. People, I mean, I have actually heard from one guest. I was like, actually, can you edit that? So I took the video down and edited it. So I was like, it humanizes you, but they didn't like it. And then that's fair. You know, you want to be represented in a good light. So that's okay.
You know what? I know who I am. I accept who I am.
That's fine too. What character in all of animated characters would you say that you're most alike?
So, okay, I was thinking about this. And I boiled it down to two. I couldn't think of just one. And I think, there's a theme here. I was thinking of Moana and Mulan. I was thinking Mulan because of, you know, the whole, like, I could do exactly what you said that I can't do. And also gender fluidity. I'm into that. No, not bisexuality. That was Shang. But like, Mulan, like, yes, I feel like that really resonated with me and just like trying to prove men wrong. Yes. And also trying to be like, no, but I care about my family. And like, you know, like I really want to like do this for you as well. Do this whole journey for you. So that's one thing. And then I guess that segues into like Moana's story of like, yeah, like you care about your family, but like you also want to go out and expand your world and like see different things and like expand your own world too. Like not just like see the world, but like your inner world too. And like, and on a visual note, I was like, wow, we have the same textured hair. Like, that's great. Like that's nice to see. And, yeah. And I think again, at that point of like, you know, that young adult space of like, okay, you're kind of getting into a teen, you know, like maybe she's 12, 11 or something like that, but you're getting into teenagehood and like, that shift in independence and like trying to explore and, you know, defying your parents' wishes and all that kind of stuff. I was like, I relate to that. That really resonates with me. And I also love the water. So
yes. Yes. So using that, using animated characters as your biopic, however you want to do that. I think you do have to pick for this if you're going to do Mulan or Moana, or you can do a completely different character. But we can keep it with yourself. If you want to do parents, I don't know, cousins or friends, pick like 2 to 3 other people.
Okay. I thought about this. And if we're doing this time period right now, in my 20s, like if we're talking about this snapshot of my life then I would pick the entire cast of Kaoru and Rirakuma because I just feel like we are all tired workers like Kaoru and we just want to come home to real soft buds like Rirakuma and Kiroi Tori, the little yellow bird, and also Ko Rirakuma, a real cute friend. Just eat snacks and vibe in our apartment. And
I love that.
I really feel like that's my era right now. I just want to vibe with friends, be cute, you know, have a job still, and just enjoy life.
Be cute and vibe with friends. You know, that is a whole mood.
That's where I'm at. That's my answer.
And then now to kind of like more icebreakers, even though we're past the icebreaker point. if you were stuck on a desert island, what two characters would you prefer to have with you?
Okay. I don't know if it's like, I guess it could be considered a character. It's a Pokemon. And I would...
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, I think, right. So I would choose, because it came to mind the first time, like that was the first Pokemon that came to mind. I would choose Pelipper, which is the pelican looking Pokemon, because one, it could fish because it's a pelican. Get me some fish. It also knows how to fly, so I could ride it, and also knows the move surf, so I could leave the island if I wanted to. So that would be great. And then the second person that I would have, I was like, oh, I don't know who I want. And then my partner was like, maybe Uncle Iroh would be nice, a good conversationalist. Ooh. And I was like, you know what, that's cute, and I love tea, so maybe Uncle Iroh as well.
I like that a lot. I like how different guests like interpret this question. Like some people think of more like survival. Some people think of like company. Some people split it. They're like, okay, well, just so I don't go crazy, I might want this character with me. But so we can get off the island, I might want this one with me. Yeah. So it's all up to whatever you want. We have one more question.
Ooh.
And this one is a wild card because I didn't just think of it, but I didn't include it. So with all that has happened this year thus far, what would you say has been the best thing that's happened to you?
The best thing that has happened to me was me leaning on my community, I think, and how community has come through for me in every single way. So the best thing that has happened to me was community. Like you said, so much has happened this year, and I think I'm at a point where I'm very much able to vocalize and truly believe, like, I cannot do this alone. Like, I really cannot. And I need people, and I want people around me. And that includes like coworkers, collaborators, family and friends, and chosen family specifically, that really understand you, like, so I feel like that's,
I love that. And honestly, with that, the episode is coming to a conclusion, Pearl.
Wow.
I know. Unless there's any sort of last additional things, I think that was a great note to end it on. But in case there's anything that you were like, wait, I wanted to talk about this or get this off my chest too. No?
No, I think that was amazing.
Perfect. So I will just edit that. I would like to thank all my listeners and viewers for tuning in. Pearl, can you share if anyone wants to get in contact with you or learn more about you, if it's a website, social media handles, maybe if they want to check out your book, if it's still available, any sort of things like that? Can you just drop some links for people?
Okay, bear with me. Okay, so my website is pearllow.com, PEARLLOW.com. It's my whole portfolio. I am active on Twitter, which is Fumi-chun, which is FUMI_CHUN. I'm most active there. I have Instagram, which is also Fumi-chun, but without the underscore. And I'll be available for work, I think, in January. So hit me up if you need a new director, an episodic director, a storyboard artist, you name it. Please reach out to me via email, which is pearllow2@gmail.com. And if you want to pick up my Bailey School books, I've adapted the first two books. So, The Bailey School Kids, The Adventures of the Bailey School Kids, Vampires Don't Wear Polka Dots. And the second one.
That one.
Yes. Then the second book, The Adventures of the Bailey School Kids, Frankenstein Doesn't Plant Petunias. They are available in all bookstores that you could think of, including Bezos's Amazon. So get your books if you feel like it. It's a real fun read, and I think it's really great for kids like the grade 3 to 5. It's a good age range. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, once again, I'd like to thank Pearl for joining me in this episode. All of the links that she's mentioned, her website, social media, all of that can be found in the description or episode show notes.